There are a few main errors that happen in rowing as a result of shoulder muscle dysfunction, weakness, or poor control. In general, we're looking for rowers to maintain a neutral position between elevation and depression while moving between partial retraction and partial protraction. In this video, I'll break down what these terms mean, how I teach these movements and correct errors on the erg, and how we can train these movements and muscles with strength training. Elevation and depression is vertical shoulder movement, shrugging the shoulders up or packing them down. Rowers manage elevation and depression throughout the stroke cycle, from release to mid-recovery to entry to mid-drive. Protraction and retraction is horizontal shoulder movement. Protraction is reaching forward to move the shoulder forward in its capsule, while retraction is pulling the shoulder blades backward and together on the back. Here I'm demonstrating all of these movements from the rear angle, elevation and depression, and then protraction and retraction, so you can see them from a different perspective. Errors with shoulder movement occur in a few different main stroke areas. These errors are most often due to over-reliance on the upper trapezius muscles, or traps for short. In this video from the Muscle and Motion YouTube channel, the traps are the purple fibers on the back, upper traps at the top of the back meeting the neck, middle traps running horizontally below them, and then lower traps at an angle going down the spine. The upper traps are strong, and the rowing motion can make them stronger, disproportionately so compared to the weaker middle and lower traps and the other muscles of the mid-back that all contribute to shoulder control. Many rowers elevate the shoulders at the release, shrugging with the upper traps to finish the drive. However, this typically brings the hands up with the shoulders, so these rowers also often get blades stuck at the release when the blade stays in the water too deep or too long. The shoulders should stay in the neutral position at the release. Rowers sometimes shrug and excessively protract to move the hands away into the recovery. This results in unstable positioning and variable blade heights on the recovery and a poor position at the entry. The shoulders should stay in the neutrally elevated position as the hands lead the body away into a position of some protraction. A very common error is lunging forward with the shoulder at the entry. This uses both protraction and elevation to feel like a longer, more powerful stroke. However, it's not effective length because the shoulder can't transmit or sustain force from this excessively protracted, elevated position. The early drive force is wasted until the rower gets the shoulder back into a stable position to transfer force. Get your protraction and reach early on the recovery phase, have it locked in before you're on the slide approaching the entry. A final major error is elevating during the mid-drive. This is often a variation of summing forces or combining force from multiple body parts to compensate for a lack of strength elsewhere. For example, if the lats don't have the strength for the mid-drive phase, rowers will shrug up to use the upper traps to maintain pressure on the blade. They might depress the shoulders at the release, appearing to slump into the bow, or they might stay shrugged, bringing us back around to error number 1 in the cyclical stroke movement. In my experience, excessive depression and retraction is much less of a common error, but it can still occur. This rowing looks very stiff and jerky as I keep my shoulders firmly down and back through the entire movement. We want a neutrally elevated position and some, but not excessive, protraction and retraction at the correct points in the stroke sequence. I demonstrated the first major errors at the point in the stroke cycle at which they occur, but now we'll see them in full slide as part of the whole stroke. As this rolls, I want to address the common coaching cue of relax the shoulders. There's nothing relaxing about rowing, and rowers who make it look relaxed are usually working pretty hard to do so. Don't confuse appearance with action or intent. Relax the shoulders really means keep the shoulders down, and that means having the control and strength in the other muscles besides the naturally strong upper traps that elevate the shoulders. We'll talk about that in the next section of this video. Now let's talk correctives. I always start with education and making sure that rowers understand the goal technique and are familiar with the different elements of shoulder movement. Feel the positions of elevation, depression, protraction, and retraction at the different points of the stroke cycle. We can then use drills to work on maintaining these good positions. If rowers understand the goal technique and can perform the goal technique at lower rates, lower pressure, or for shorter durations, but then fail to maintain the goal technique at higher rates, higher pressure, or longer durations, then that suggests to me that the problem is more physical in nature than technical. That's where my role as strength coach begins. Step number 2 is engaging the muscles, focusing on feeling the right muscles work at the right times under controlled conditions. We then progress to step number 3 and strength training to increase performance capacity. The YWT raise is a great way to teach basic shoulder movement and muscular coordination. We're going to make the letters Y, W, and T with our arms while working to keep the shoulder blades in a back and down position, or retraction and depression. Do this from a hip hinge position with feet approximately shoulder width. You also notice that I'm keeping my thumbs pointed up towards the sky for all movements, especially Y and T. This helps keep the shoulders in the back and down position. I commonly use a good-bad contrast to help rowers feel these different positions. Shrug the shoulders up and rotate the arm inwards to feel the bad position of excessive protraction and elevation. Then roll the shoulders downwards and squeeze the shoulder blades together like you're trying to put your shoulder blades in your back pockets. Go back and forth between the positions a few times, feeling the differences in muscular activation. Then do the normal Y raise by raising the arms upward, keeping the shoulders in that back and down position, staying in a nice braced hip hinge. Don't push the range of motion more than you can control. The point of this exercise is getting the right muscles to work, not maxing out range of motion. Next is the W raise. This is also training the element of external shoulder rotation, which we never get from rowing or erging, so it's filling a valuable gap in that way. Keep thinking about shoulders back and down to stay in the correct position. We can do the same contrast feeling with the W raise as with the Y raise. Shrug the shoulders up and roll the arm forward into internal rotation. Feel the difference in muscular activation compared to the back and down external rotation position. The T raise is the final position of the YWT raise, and an especially great one for scullers seeking the nice supported hug the horizon position at the entry. Keeping the shoulders back and down, thumbs pointed up towards the sky, bring the hands together at the bottom position, and then raise them straight upwards to make the T shape at the top position. Once again, we can do the same contrast feeling here, shrugging the shoulders up and pointing the thumbs down to the ground. Bad. Pack the shoulders down and point the thumbs up, and you should feel the mid-back and rear shoulder muscles activate strongly. Once we have the movements down and can engage the right muscles at the right time, strength training serves to increase performance capacity of these muscles. I commonly program the YWT raise for 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps per letter, so one set of 8 means 8 Ys, 8 Ws, and 8 Ts. We don't need much load with this exercise because the focus is on the coordination and activation. Start with body weight only, then add small load from there, being aware of the tendency to shift tension to the upper traps or other non-target muscles when fatigue or load is too high. The band pull-apart is another great exercise to train the mid-back and rear shoulder muscles to be strong in retraction and depression. Use 3 to 5 sets of 12 to 20 reps per set, and a band that is light enough to get a good range of motion and stay in the good position to feel the right muscles doing the work. Avoid shrugging the shoulders and using the upper traps to do the work instead of the mid-back and rear shoulder muscles that are the target of the exercise. Use a lighter band and cue the rower to keep the shoulders down in the back pockets throughout the exercise. The band should contact the torso around the lower chest area, not above the chest or close to the collarbone. Another common error is arching at the low back to compensate for a lack of shoulder strength and or mobility. Cue the rower to keep the ribs down and a good brace at the abs and glutes to keep the lower body and torso in a good position. Sit on a bench if necessary to isolate the shoulder motion. The face pull is a more complex exercise, sort of like a more dynamic W raise. The lifter stabilizes the lower body and torso and then goes through the full range of motion from shoulders forward at the bottom position to shoulders back, down, and externally rotated at the top position. As with the other exercises, it is important to achieve this movement with the right muscles and avoid shrugging the shoulders up to use the upper traps. We want to use our strength training time to focus on the right muscles doing the work at the right times, in this case training the shoulders back and down position with as light a load and as slow a tempo as necessary to achieve the goal technique. Progress from there. You can also do the face pull on a cable machine. I'm using my garage gym pulley cable here, but any regular commercial gym cable stack and rope handle will do, as long as the handles pull apart far enough to achieve adequate range of motion. I always include YWTs, pull-aparts, and face pulls in my strength training programs in some form. We build on them with any horizontal and vertical pulling exercises like rows, chin ups, or lat pull downs, as well as horizontal and vertical pushing or pressing exercises, plus full body force transfer exercises like deadlifts and kettlebell swings. The same basic skills apply as far as achieving the stable shoulder blade back and down with the moving arm bone or implement held in the hand. Use strength training to teach and train these skills, muscles, and movements in detail with great focus, and then just try to make it all feel natural when you're rowing or erging.